welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very important show. We have Lawrence Galante on, who's a PhD in health sciences. He's written this book, Energy Healing, very interesting book. He's got a very deep knowledge of health and healing. He's been around for a long time studying this, and he's speaking to us specifically today about a very important issue facing New Yorkers, and that has to do with the freedom you have, or may not have, of choosing different kinds of healing modalities for your own selves. So Lawrence is going to be spelling out some of the issues in this legislation today and what it is we can all do together to come together and make a difference. Hi, Lawrence.
Hello, Mitchell.
So glad you're here.
Glad to be here.
Good. To talk about this incredibly important thing that so few people really know about. Is that so?
That's so, and many people are unaware of the situation in New York State. And the situation in New York State is kind of gray in many respects, and it can be dramatically black and white in other respects.
Yes.
And
what is the issue at hand? What's the challenge that you want to address?
Well, the issue at hand is the issue of unlicensed alternative healthcare providers, and this can range from anything from a reflexologist to a Reiki practitioner to a polarity or a homeopath or an herbalist.
Basically, any unlicensed, or at least to date unlicensed, alternative profession.
Correct. And many of these professions have long history. Traditionally, people have been doing hands-on healing since the Bible and
before it.
Right, and before it. And people have been taking herbs. Probably the first system of medicine is herbs. And all of a sudden, these things are in jeopardy of being classified as a Class E felony, which is pretty serious. I mean, it's sort of like almost like on the equivalency of murder, for doing some of these things.
Yes.
And
for healing.
For healing. Yeah. Right. And that
What's
really
wrong with this picture, Lawrence? Murder, healing.
Right. That's what's wrong with the picture.
Yeah.
We should be actually opening up our doors to healers of all types, and we should be allowing consumers, such as myself. I'm a consumer, and so are you. We are all consumers. We should have the freedom of access to any kind of healing modality that we wish to have access to.
Sure. I mean, after all, they say that this is a free country.
Right. That's what they say. It's a free country.
Right. It's written too, though.
Right. Yeah. That's right. And many political parties say they want less government interference. So, however, we are finding that in many areas there is a lot of government interference, and perhaps we should be looking at where the government is interfering, especially in regards to our health, specifically me for my health and you for your health.
Right.
And if you choose to go to an herbalist or to a shaman for that, or to a medical doctor,
sure,
that should be your privilege and my right.
Right. Not a privilege, actually. It's a right. By definition. A privilege is actually legally another entity. Not to put too fine a point on it, but it is different. Right. And it is by matter of right, constitutional law, that protects our God-given right to choose, as you're saying.
Right.
And all those words make a huge difference, actually. I mean,
legally.
It's literally the way it is.
Right.
That we have the God-given right, and the Constitution is there to protect. And this is actually a real interference. It's an intrusion on that right.
Correct. The way the law is being interpreted today, I mean, I can read to you a quote. This is the New York State law. According to the New York Educational Law, Section 6521 defines the practice of medicine as diagnosing, treating, operating, or prescribing for any human disease, pain, injury, or deformity or physical condition. So that is the definition of medicine. So, okay, that's the definition of medicine, and the problem becomes when you start interpreting all of these other things, for example, like reflexology, as being medicine, which under a broad interpretation it can be interpreted that way legally, by good lawyers especially.
Yes, right.
And when that becomes the interpretation of medicine, then people who are doing these things are practicing medicine without a medical license, and therefore they're subject to a Class E felony. And this means that they're in danger of going to jail, and we as consumers indirectly then become victims because we lose our right to see them.
Right. Right.
And
we lose the freedom of choice, and actually through taxes we help to incarcerate them.
Correct.
If you want to go full
That's
circle.
Right. That's right.
So what this whole thing represents then, Lawrence, is a loss of our ability to choose
Correct.
who it is we want to be interacting with us on the level of healing.
Absolutely.
That's what it comes to.
Exactly.
And so there is this project called the New York Natural Health Project.
Correct.
Is that what it is?
The New York Natural Health Project. And,
Tell us about
and
that.
There's a website anyone can go to. It's NY Natural Health Project, spelled out like that.
We'll put it on at the end
.com.
also.
Okay. And people can read what the law is. And the law was, a bill has just been introduced both in the Senate and the Assembly in New York. And the Senate bill is Bill S4857, and it's sponsored by Senator Kemp Hannan. And the Assembly bill is A, like Apple, 8704, which is sponsored by Assembly members Michael Genaris and Vivian Cook. The bill was introduced in the spring of 2001 into the New York legislation. And this bill, we feel, is our way to ensure this right to access to alternative or complementary health care providers.
So it's providing, in a sense, you could say, legal coverage or an umbrella
Correct.
to non-licensed alternative healthcare offerers, practitioners.
Right. Now, we know that these people do exist, and there are lots of statistics, the New England Journal of Medicine and other statistics that are giving all kinds of figures for how many Americans are visiting alternative practitioners who are often and usually non-licensed.
Well, there was that famous article in New England Journal of Medicine some years ago that caused an outrage, and it was in Time and Newsweek, and everybody went, my God, look at how many people are going to alternative medical practitioners.
Right, and the figures go as high as 3/4 of the American population have visited at least one type of alternative practitioner.
Yes.
And have spent billions of dollars, and it's their right to spend that money if they so choose. The majority are white, middle class, or upper class Americans who are not, these are not ignorant peasants, hillbillies. These are educated and intelligent people.
Informed,
and they choose to try this as to complement their normal medical practice.
Sure. And many people have opted for alternatives rather than conventional allopathic medicine as well.
That's right. And many doctors at times have referred people to see a this or that type of practitioner just to see if it works,
Oh, sure. And even more than to see if it works. Oftentimes it's a recognition that they can't do anything for the person in their paradigm, their medical paradigm. Right. And they know that, I've received referrals as an acupuncturist from doctors because they knew that they couldn't do anything for the back pain.
That's right.
They had reached their limit, and as a responsible practitioner themselves, wanted to offer whatever they could to help the patient.
That's right.
Which is, honorable.
Now, now acupuncture is now finally licensed in New York State, but
it took us about 15 years.
Right, but let's say 2 years before you were licensed, were you really a felon? Were you a danger to the world? Were you killing people by the multitudes? So these things are progressing. Many of them are becoming licensed. Naturopathy is trying to become licensed, and that's fine if they do. But if they don't, because the New York State legislatures are having a problem, actually. Licensing costs money. It's a long procedure. It's a drawn out. They have to get then a committee, a board that's going to oversee these people, and it creates quite a few problems for the state. So they are apparently less and less likely to be licensing more and more of these people. And then, how many of these can you, do you want to license shamans, and then do you want to license Reiki people, and then do you want to license Traeger people, and then polarity people? Theoretically you could. You'd have to set up a licensing board. It's going to be a long, difficult thing, whereas this would sort of cover everyone in one clean sweep. And by the way, this is modeled after the Minnesota bill that was just passed, which I think it's called the Minnesota Natural Health Care Bill.
Oh, okay.
And there's a link on our site to that site, and you can see what that bill is all about. And they just passed this, so I think the people in New York and in other states have gotten a little heart from the passage of that bill. And I know a similar legislation is being proposed in California and New Jersey and in several other states. So people are really demanding the right of freedom of health care choice. And
that's really what this represents.
That's what it represents. We should have the choice to choose where we want to go for our health care. And it's as simple as that.
It's as simple as that. What kind of support do you have in the legislature right now?
Well, it was
Do you have any?
You mean as far as assemblymen or senators? Yes, I know we do have some senators and assembly people that have told us that they are going to back this up. I serve on the steering committee for this, and I'm the I'm the treasurer as well. That means I enter the checks in when we get them, and we do need checks to support this. And I have gotten some communication back and forth from some senators, and many of them do support it. Many of them have told me that they do support it, but they're afraid of it because they're wondering where, for example, where the AMA is going to come down on this bill. Are they going to be opposed to it or going to be in favor of it? Interestingly enough, in Minnesota, they did not oppose it because actually the AMA realized that it might be to their advantage. They have the Mayo Clinic in Minnesota, the biggest cancer clinic. And a lot of these alternative things, like Touch for Health and things like that, therapeutic touch, Reiki, polarity, all these things, they're finding it's very soothing to patients. And anything that will put their minds in a better place is a good thing for patients.
While they pay for chemotherapy, it's great.
That's right. And if this were not illegal, then it becomes possible for hospitals or private physicians to hire these people as an adjunct to their office or to their hospital staff, and people are actually wanting it, and there's no reason not to give it to them. And
so the AMA is not feeling threatened by it?
Well, they didn't in Minnesota. So we have yet to see how they're going to feel in New York. I hope they don't feel threatened by it, because I think that the American Medical Association should see how they can utilize these people, how they can benefit from it, and at the same time how they could help benefit these other people. Because as it becomes more recognized, the standards and the credentials and the schooling in all of these professions will naturally become elevated.
Without question. Without question. Now you're speaking very rationally. You've always been speaking rationally. I don't mean that, but the point of view that you're putting out is such a reasonable one that it should have a natural appeal to anyone interested in promoting health and medicine. Because it's adjunctive. It's not even replacing. That's not the conversation.
No.
But it is adjunctive.
Right.
It's complementary.
Absolutely.
And that's what we need to see.
Right. And the more educated we as consumers and we as Americans become, the more we can decide, well, for this condition, I want to see an MD. For that condition, I want to see, an acupuncturist. For that condition, I want to see a massage therapist.
Exactly.
And for this condition, I want to see that fellow over there who knows what.
Right.
It should be our choice.
Shaman, because they're dealing with a spiritual ill.
That's right. I want to see a priest about this condition.
Yeah.
You should be able to see whomever you want to see.
Sure. It really is that simple.
Yeah.
Now, what can people do in New York who see this and learn about it to help support this?
Well, they could first go to our site, as I said, New York Natural Health Project. .org, I believe it is. Yeah. .org
Okay.
organization.
You said .com before,
Yeah,
so
I'm sorry,
it's .org.
Yeah.
We'll put it on.
Okay. And And then the next thing they could do is write letters to support it.
Good.
They can send money to help contribute. We do have to pay lawyers, and that can get very expensive. Everyone is working without salary. I mean, I've been working on it for over 2 years. I've never received one penny, and it's quite a few hours of my work. And when I work, I get paid very well. If I wanted to work doing other things, I get paid quite well.
Yes.
But I choose to spend my time on this because I do feel it's very important that we have this. I'm usually not a very terribly political person, but this is one issue where I've all of a sudden become
Yes.
politicized.
Exactly. Sure.
And
sure. It's important. Can we just look at the
Sure.
definition of medicine again?
the definition of medicine is right here.
So interesting. Defines New York education law, by the way.
Right.
Not medical law section, but
It
education
falls under the
law.
education, apparently.
Right. I know acupuncture does.
Right, yes.
Defines the practice of medicine as diagnosing, treating, operating, or prescribing for any human disease, pain, injury, or deformity, or physical condition.
Or physical condition.
That is so intensely broad.
Right, it is quite broad.
Technically, this needs to be revised while you're at it, adding this law. Because if you hurt your wrist, and I said, "Oh, Lawrence,"
Right.
and I did that, I am actually, in some way, helping to relieve
That's
the
right.
pain or injury there.
That's right.
And that could be consired
Right.
practicing medicine without a
Absolutely,
license.
it could be construed that way.
I happen to be licensed, so. But
Yeah.
this is wrong. This is wrong. This is way too broad, and they leave out perhaps the most important element of any work a doctor could do, or a medical practitioner, which is healing. That word is nowhere in that definition, curiously enough.
Right.
But look, the point is, you made it very well. We, as Americans, as citizens of the state of New York, deserve, by definition, in a free country, in a free state, the choice of who it is we want to see for what. It's that simple.
Right.
It's that simple. So what you're doing here is vitally important to protect this right, And just to reiterate the point, if any of you are seeing, let's just say, a reflexologist, and it does you good and you know it does, or you see a polarity therapist, or an aromatherapist, whatever it is, and that's another of the ancient practices, aromatherapy, the use of essential oils, a concentration of oils from plants, and just simply breathing them. Now, if you went to consult somebody for this, and you were finding that you were getting better, if this does not pass what Lawrence has come to talk to us about, you won't be able to see that person anymore and get the benefits that you're currently getting. That's how serious this is.
Right.
That's why anyone who is using or would think ever to use such a differing currently non-licensed modality should really get behind this bill and support it.
Absolutely.
It highlights something also, Lawrence. We are the ones really with power.
Right.
We are the ones with power, and we're always forgetting about it. And this is kind of a deep spiritual piece that we live as though we're victims, and we don't realize that the politicians really, really need us, our vote, and they really need our support on many different levels, including our tax money. And so when we say something, as a group, they jump.
Right.
And we have proof of it. It has happened over and again, both locally as well as nationally and internationally. We have what's going on with email, for instance, these days is very powerful. It's become a major political tool in changing things around. It's happening environmentally with what's been going on in the wildlife refuge up in Alaska and the drilling, and certainly can happen in our own backyard with this.
That's right. It's very important. I just returned from Europe where I was teaching, and over there, alternative medicines are really taken so much more for granted. Herbalists, homeopaths, people that do any kind of body work. It's just it's taken so seriously. They allow it in many of the hospitals. They allow private practices to open up.
They welcome.
They welcome it. Yeah, they welcome it.
A whole different attitude.
It's like unthought of that this should be prohibited. But, actually this bill does have provisions. If this passes, we have provisions. There'll be an office set up for people. If there is a problem seeing any of these practitioners, there'll be an office set up where they can state their grievances, file their complaints, and they can do that. Also, if this is passed, in order to give further protection to the people, according to this bill, these practitioners are going to be required to give their credentials, whatever they may be. I studied 5 years of reflexology, or I studied 5 days of reflexology. You have to state that, and once these are stated, and you let the person who is coming to see this practitioner sign a paper and telling him you're not a medical doctor, and that you realize you have the right to see a medical doctor if you should so choose. And I've only had this and this much, or I've had that and that much of experience. Some people are very, very experienced. I know some acupuncturists come from China with 40 years experience, and they're not allowed to practice. But that's another issue because acupuncture is licensed. This does not address license professions at all. That's up to their licensing board, and so the acupuncturist.
This is actually for everybody who is not a licensed
This is for everyone who is not licensed. But the point I'm making is that there are many competent people who do not have licenses, and
they're driving taxi cabs.
That's right, and likewise, there may be many incompetent people with licenses. Licensing is not the end-all to establish competency. As I was saying earlier, if I wanted brain surgery on myself, I wouldn't go to any licensed medical doctor because some doctor may be a gynecologist. I wouldn't go to a gynecologist for my brain surgery. I would go to a board-certified surgeon or a brain specialist or something like that.
Sure.
And that certification by peer members is much more important than that state licensing. I mean, many doctors are state licensed, but it's that peer recognition by other doctors that you are
approval.
Right, an approval that you are an expert in this type of surgery.
Exactly.
That's the kind of surgeon that I would want to go to for that kind of surgery.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
So there is quite a bit to say about certification. Who is giving the certification? What does that certification mean? Who's behind it? How much training does that involve? So all of that should be given and spoon-fed to the client.
Sure.
So that they become informed. And once they are informed, well, this guy has had 2 days of study, and this guy has had 25 years of study, and he's got 75 degrees, certifications and degrees. This one has 2 days of study and no degrees. Where will I go? Maybe I'll go to this guy.
Sure.
Or maybe I'll go to my MD. Or maybe I'll go to my acupuncturist.
Or for whatever reason, the chemistry may be just right for going to the person who has 1 degree.
That's right.
Or one,
or
5-day class.
Or no degree.
Or no degree at all.
Yeah, I don't think Jesus had any degrees.
Exactly. That's right.
And he was, I understand, quite a good healer. So
rumor has it.
So it's, and probably in New York that would be a felony. Some of the stuff he'd be doing, right? So
do you want to arrest Jesus?
So sometimes word of mouth. You may know people that have had wonderful results with someone. Sometimes people coming from other countries that have had lots of practice but are not licensed.
Oh, sure.
So
MDs who can't afford to go through the licensing procedures here, who are from Eastern Europe or elsewhere. It's a big problem.
Right.
Now, about this, I mean, it really actually sounds like a well-constructed and very responsible piece of legislation here. Mm-hmm. And by no means is it looking to somehow put one over on anybody. It's looking to responsibly disclose information about what background is of the practitioner at hand, and so the consumer is fully apprised of what that person's background is and is not. And in that disclosure, they can make an informed decision as suits them.
Right.
This is an important thing for people to know, that it's constructed to be of benefit to the consumer and to allow people who have chosen to be in a non-licensed profession to practice their art.
That's right.
And that's another interesting point, that it's actually an art. And ultimately, medicine is an art. With all of the conversation about science, when the surgeon goes to finally do his cuts, he usually asks for help and says, God willing, this will go well.
Right.
He gets to a certain point of scientific knowledge before even he or she, seeks counsel or assistance from another, if you will, dimension. Mm-hmm. It's curious, right?
Right. It is very curious, and many surgeons, I can't speak for all surgeons, many of them do, and I've certainly read many books by doctors who often turn to higher levels for inspiration.
Yes.
And they get it.
Exactly, and that's another, I'm glad you brought that up. An increasing number, a high proportion, a significant proportion of doctors are using and studying alternative medicine. They're studying nutrition, right. They're studying supplementation, they're studying homeopathy, they're studying
right.
acupuncture,
That's
they're studying different massage techniques,
right.
They're studying different forms of physical therapy, and what's interesting is more and more people studying human anatomy and physiology, and veterinary medicine actually. The combination of more people looking at the subject is yielding more and more effective modalities.
Right.
So it's to everybody's benefit on that level alone that we have more practitioners of different sorts to contribute to the general understanding and pool of information about the way the human being works. After all, we know hypnosis does what it does.
Yeah.
And we don't have the greatest explanations of why language affects the body the way it does. We have some workable, plausible ideas, but we know that it does. Mm-hmm. This is an amazing contribution to the overall body of medicine, if you
That's
will,
right?
Right.
I want to just make one other point. There
Please.
are certain things that are restricted by this bill as well. In other words, someone would not be covered for giving medicine, would not be covering for breaking the skin, let's say with needles, would not be covered for doing massage. This would not entitle anyone to do anything that's already licensed. This only deals with things that are unlicensed. So the licensed people are still safe in their domain, and if we want their services, we would go to them still.
Very good. Well, Lawrence, thank you very much for all the work that you have done, truly, in helping to protect us, we consumers. It's really helpful. And the unlicensed practitioners. Really, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And please go to the website and take a look and send a letter or 5. It would really help. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.